Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week. So excited to be with everybody as we continue our trip around the National Football League. The 23 season is moving extremely fast. I can't even believe it. We're almost a conference championship week, and we'll talk about the matchups coming up soon. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to go against Baltimore Ravens, and the upstart Detroit Lions will be playing the San Francisco 49ers. We'll break down those matchups. But first, as we always do, we're going to take a look back at the divisional round. And being that my main man, Kevin Midgette, we're going to bring him in here. We're both in the Philadelphia area, so we got to vent and talk about these Eagles some more. I know I was on a lot last week on Martinez and Company on the Tony Bruno Network, and we talked extensively about the Eagles, but there's always more to talk about with the Philadelphia Eagles. There still has not been a major decision made in terms of their head coach, but we'll see. As I said, thank you for being with us this evening. Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game and a Broad Street South Network. Kevin, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well.
Lean in a little closer, Kevin. Yeah. Check your audio levels there, Kevin. And it's crazy with the Eagles and their situation. I got a media alert today, and they said Wednesday that General Manager Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni would be talking to the public on Wednesday. So that just confirmed all my previous predictions and everything. I was on with Angel and Rich Q, and Rich Q was stern. He said Sirianni's not coming back. He's a bum. They're done with him. And I said I just think my experience of being around the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie and how they like to run their organization, I just thought he'd be coming back, and sure enough, he will be. They jettisoned Sean Desai, their defensive coordinator, who they already demoted. We knew he wasn't coming back. They fired him the other day. Matt Patricia, his contract's running out. They also said, see you later. Obviously, that was extremely bad decision, turning that defense over to Matt Patricia. And then you wonder on the offensive side of the ball if offensive coordinator Brian Johnson is going to be able to survive this. Kevin, let's see if we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Well, there was one thing.
Angel, can you turn him up, or is there? Kevin, you're still kind of a little low there. So I don't know if you have an external mic or if it's not coming through the laptop. But I'll keep talking. You keep trying. And now the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll go back to the wild card round and look at what happened with them. A game that I had previewed and talked about with Rich and Angel, and I had said, for some strange reason, I don't know why I thought that they could win this game, but they're playing a Tampa team that was 9-8 coming into it, and I figured, okay, Tampa's had a pretty much tough season. They had a lull where they were losing games over and over again. They turned it around, but I just thought, okay, the Eagles, even though they were stumbling into the playoffs, losing 5 of 6 games, that they could turn around against a Bucs team that was kind of there to be had. So, but boy, was I wrong. This Philadelphia Eagles team, they didn't even show up, in my opinion, in this game. A game where, when you crack down the numbers, Tampa Bay won the first down battle, 23-13. In terms of total yards, Tampa Bay 426 total yards. Eagles only 276. We talked about This was a rematch going back to week 3 where the Eagles beat them 25-11, and they were able to run the ball extensively with DeAndre Swift. Well, in this game, the Eagles only had 42 net rushing yards, and that really tells the tale of the tape because Tampa Bay had 119 rushing yards, and they were able to control the clock. When you look at that battle, too, as well, Tampa Bay had the ball for 34 minutes and some change, and the Eagles were close to about only 26. So could not move the ball, stymied over and over again. And I think, the biggest thing, Kevin, is defensively. I'm a guy that likes hard-nosed defense. I grew up in Philadelphia during the Budding Ryan era. These guys, they were hitting people early and often, and this Eagles team was not tackling anybody, and that just showed you the pure want to or not want to of this group. Kevin, what did you think in terms of that defense?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, a little better. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is with their defense, they're really packing work. There's nobody that wants to
Yeah, it's in and out. I don't. Why don't you try closing your browser and then coming back in? I don't know if you have. All right. Yeah. Do you have an external mic? Maybe try that. Well,
No.
we'll be here. Try that stuff.
Well,
Um.
I'm holding you guys.
So, Angel, what did you think in turn? Now, when we break down the stats from that game, the Eagles were 0 for 9 on third downs, 0 for 2 on fourth downs. I mean, I know you and I have talked extensively about this disheartening loss, and all our family and friends in the Philadelphia area, they were just. My father's a season ticket holder; he's beside himself. He told me he walked away from the game. I don't think I've ever heard him say that in about 15 years or so. So, what were you thinking in terms of this loss, and what do you think the Eagles can move forward from here?
If I can, there we go. All right.
There we go.
I'll add myself in there. Let me take away this other thing down here. Therefore, that doesn't take half the room. Okay. So as far as if we're going back as far as the Eagles here for the moment,
Yeah.
we talked about it on Martinez Company, and we spoke about how Sirianni had lost control of a lot of the room for obvious reasons. And it seemed like after,
Right.
We heard the tight end talk about Dallas Goedert. He said that after they knew they were in the playoffs, he let the foot off the gas and he just coasted in. Well, they looked ridiculous in the wild card round because obviously that wasn't true. You guys were atrocious after week 11 going forward. And so after 49ers took them for a dog walk, the Eagles could not find themselves defensively, offensively, special teams, all the way around. Our secondary, everything was a complete bust. Then they take away Desai to bring in Matt Patricia down to the sideline. And, Patricia looked good for one game. And after that, it all collapsed. So for the Eagles to turn around and say they want to replace all the, your offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, Ron Rivera right now has got an interview to become the new defensive coordinator if it happens. And then to bring Sirianni back again, you're band-aiding what we know is the problem. But the Eagles feel like Sirianni's not the problem. It was the coordinators. Okay, well, say what you want. Your head coach is still responsible for your coordinators. So I think there was a major disconnect in the locker room. Obviously, it's coming out a lot more. Apparently, Jalen Hurts was stoic, unapproachable at times. And that says a lot about this team. So I'm still not sold that what Howie is doing right now. And I even sent you a text saying that maybe, it's time for us to look at Howie Roseman. But as you stated, Lurie handpicked him. And so we got to deal with the cards that are dealt.
Yeah. And I talked about he's Teflon at this point in his career. He remember when Chip Kelly came in, he had been with the organization 20-some years, had a lot of bad draft picks and questionable things that he had done before that. And then Kelly kind of, Lori gave him the power. He was able to put him over in a corner and say, go away. And then that whole thing blew up. And then Jeffrey Lurie said, you know what, I got to bring somebody in here I can trust, somebody I know. And it's something, I've talked to a lot of front office people around the years. These guys, a lot of times they only get one shot, you know what I mean? And that shot may be a 3-4 year period. And then they have to move on to something else. And they're like, well, Roseman was lucky enough to get that golden opportunity to come back. Lori said, you're my guy. And yes, he did deliver in 2017. You can never take that from him. They won the Super Bowl. And I think all that goodwill and that resume and everything, Lori just is never going to. He can stay there as long as he wants. You know what I mean? As long as Lori owns that team, I think Howie Roseman's going to be his guy running the show. Don Smolinski is the president there as well. Those three work hand in hand together, and they're just going to continue forward. And the thing is, Sirianni is their guy. And I think a lot of times they're stubborn. They don't like to admit when they make a mistake. We see it all the time with, look at a draft pick like Danny Watkins or Derek Barnett. I mean, these guys were not good, and they continue to trot them out there and say, no, we know what we're doing. And it's similar here with Sirianni. And then you start wondering, is this a situation like Brandon Staley went through with the LA Chargers? This last year, everyone knew that thing was done. And they decided, no, let's change a couple pieces here and there, get a new coordinator, and bring him back. Well, he didn't even last through the entire season this year. And you wonder if that's going to happen with the Eagles. Now, they're talking about bringing in some strong personalities, as you said, at defensive coordinator right now. Ron Rivera, they're talking to him. They're talking to the Don Wink Martindale coming from the New York Giants, possibly Leslie Frazier. A veteran-type guy is going to come in there, and maybe some of them can teach him, how to be an overall CEO, how to organize himself in a way that he knows what he's doing. I'm hearing maybe they're even going to bring Frank Reich back on the offensive side, but I think they don't want to pull the trigger and say, oh, Brian Johnson, fire him, or maybe just make him the quarterback's coach or what that is, because he had an established relationship with Jalen Hurts in the past. So, offensively, we'll see that's moving parts. But defensively, they're definitely going to get stronger. They're going to bring in somebody that has a voice. But you start to wonder, do they have the pieces in place, the players in place to make this new scheme work? And I'll answer my own question. In terms of the linebackers, their linebackers were terrible. Nick Morrow, when they signed him from the Bears, no one thought he could play then, and he had coverage lapses all season. Zach Cunningham, they brought him in late in training camp, and he's more of a thumper. He did an okay job against the run, but his coverage skills were not there. And then later in the season, they tried to bring in Shaq Leonard over from the Colts, and everybody I've talked to said Shaq Leonard said that his back is done. So he's probably not going to be even in play even further. So that was a problem. And then their safeties, really. Blankenship is a good tackler. He led the team in tacklers, but he was deficient in terms of his coverage. And then the guys that Edmonds that they signed from the Steelers, nowhere to be found. He was terrible. They kind of put him on the bench right away. Yep. And then Kevin Byard, you remember Kevin Byard, they got him at the trade deadline. Everybody's like, oh, yeah. Well, Tennessee knew he was done. Vrabel kind of had put the word out that this guy can no longer play at that high level. And he was being paid pretty well, and he just didn't turn out. So lots to clean up on that defense. And you just wonder, can a veteran guy, is he the only thing, that can clean this up? So I see we get some listeners at Big Teddy Bear, huh?
Yeah. So that's Mickey. That's usually over on Facebook, but he likes to come over to different shows. So Mickey,
nice.
Just to let you know, Kevin is normally the co-host here on the show with Lloyd, but we're trying to get him reset. And so, you'll see.
Kevin's name's underneath too. That's funny.
Yeah. So that's the reason why you see it. Joey B, what's up, Joey B? Over from Martinez Company, always at Broad Street South. And let's start, you guys. I didn't have my show today. Obviously, I ended up working a 14-hour day, so that's the reason why I wasn't on Martinez Company. But thanks, you guys, for watching. So you see Kevin Midgette under my face here. That's normally the co-host. We're trying to get his audio back up and running, and so I'm filling in right now. Normally, I'm producing a show here, but it is Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on Sports Radio 102.9 The Game.
Yeah, in the Broad Street South Network, we're glad to be with everybody. We're venting about the Eagles, and we're going to see if this team can move forward, and obviously to wrap a bow on their season. Look,
but
10-1.
The one thing I want to ask Lloyd, because you brought up a great point about these seasoned veteran coaches, if they bring them in, and if they get to talking to Nick Sirianni, let's just say hypothetically that Nick, obviously we know he's coming back. Eagles start out 0-3. Let's just say for all intents and purposes. Horrible preseason, lags over into the regular season, starts out 0-3. And let's say the Eagles do hire Ron Rivera and Frank Reich. So then do they now look at either or candidate as filling in as the interim head coach? Because you start out 0-3, you got a bunch of new coordinators. Now you got to start looking. Obviously, the problem was the coordinators. The problem lies in state.
Yeah, Angel, that's a good scenario you laid out there, and it's going to be interesting because when I look at this team, yes, they'll probably give them 6 weeks or so to really get a clear picture of this team. I'm not sure where their bye week is; they're still developing the schedule for next year. But if around by that bye week, let's say the bye week's around week 8, if they're struggling on a week 8, yeah, I could see some changes coming. And if you have a guy on your staff that's there, that's established, he can easily slide into that chair. That could easily happen. And the thing is, Sirianni's kind of a lame duck guy. He's on the last year of his contract coming up. So that's going to be a big question coming in here. And structurally, as organizationally, they have a problem. That's their biggest problem. Their locker room was fractured. We talked about, who's on the same page with Hurts. You saw him arguing with Dallas Goedert. You saw the head coach at times being aloof. Was he talking to his players? He's real good about the theatrics and the rah-rah stuff, but the actual X's and O's and getting his staff working just wasn't there. So I think they're going to have about 5-6 new coaches there, including those coordinators, and they'll try to coach this group up. Now, they do have some young guys there that they can work with, like Jalen Carter and some of the other pieces there. Some Cam Jurgens on the offensive line, who's probably going to take over for Jason Kelsey. But they're looking up now at the Dallas Cowboys. We know that in the division, no one has repeated. It happened again this year. No one's repeated since 2004, 2005. And it's going to be a situation where, they're looking at the Cowboys and the rest of the division is getting better. So their all-season plans to me, I think, number one, first and foremost, fix that defense. They got to go heavy in the draft on that defense, particularly looking at the corners, because Darius Slay, he got injured in that Tampa Bay game. Obviously, Bradbury is extremely old. Yeah. Look at some linebackers. They got to finally say, you know what, bring in somebody that's a stud, somebody that can control the middle of the field. And looking at the teams we're going to get to these games coming up, the divisional round, particularly Baltimore, you have Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen in the middle. They're just dominant. And then you have the Niners, Dre Greenlaw and Warner. They saved their bacon in that game because they almost lost that game. And it just shows you the value of linebackers. I know the Eagles for years have said, oh, we don't need, frontline linebackers, but it's time for them to get somebody in there that's a quality player. Nakobe Dean, who they've given a lot of chances to, came into the team injured from Georgia. I just don't know what he has at this point. He's kind of been lost in their scheme. Maybe they can get him going. But in a draft, it's real interesting, Angel. There's a guy, it's Jeremiah Trotter's son. He's at Clemson, and he's an All-American linebacker. I think the Eagles will probably get him in the second round. Bring him in, fix the corners, probably with their first-round pick. You probably want to get a corner. And then in terms of the offense, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out because all their receivers, they have Smith, They have Brown, who's kind of a malcontent. Is Brown going to be happy there? Is he going to get back on the same page with Jalen Hurts? Are the big questions there. And then the offensive line, we're talking about age is coming through there. So Kelsey pretty much has said he's done. I want to ask your opinion on his annex yesterday. Yeah, but they're going to need to replace him, and maybe Lane Johnson is at least coming back for one more year. So Angel, getting to Jason Kelsey, I was listening to Philadelphia radio this morning, and there were a couple guys that are like, I didn't like that he was, he's an Eagle, and he's jumping around with his shirt off and chugging beers and celebrating the Chiefs who beat us in the Super Bowl last year. The fans are saying. So, what did you think of Kelsey and his annex at his brother's game yesterday as the Chiefs beat the Bills?
I think, obviously there's a lot of love in between them both. Now, would Travis do the same thing? I would say probably not as much as Jason, but listen, we all know he's a character. We saw it when we won the Super Bowl. In his post-game, speech, obviously during a parade. So he was there. Me personally, from the way my season ended, I'm going to celebrate. I don't care if I'm hooping out with my brother and I'm cheering him on. He's out there because he was out there with the Bills Mafia fan as well. They went out to the parking lot, was enjoying his time with the fans. So, he's, to me, I saw it as he was just letting off steam. Everything went wrong. Big collapse. We saw how emotional he was. For me, I didn't take it as personal. It is what it is. He's celebrating with his brother. High five his, future sister-in-law. Who's, we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. But
yeah, what's going on?
I don't think. Yeah, well, supposedly now, again through the grapevine, it's supposed to be that they may be talking about actually getting married because at one point or another she called Jason her future brother-in-law. Now, do I see it? Probably not. Yeah. So we're not done with the whole Taylor Swift thing. What I find interesting though, Lloyd, if the Chiefs make it, again, coincidentally, just because of the colors that are up there on the Super Bowl logo, let's say for all intents and purposes, the Chiefs make it. What are the odds that Taylor Swift would perform at the Super Bowl? Just kind of throwing that nugget out there.
Yeah, I don't think Usher would be real happy about that, but I think she's a bigger star than him. She probably pushed him out the way. And, I have a couple buddies that are like, I'm done with the Chiefs. I'm tired of them flashing to her. And, why can't it be about football? All they do is show her, and she's hugging Mahomes' wife, and they're jumping. Well, they're part of the show now. It's crazy. And the Chiefs are quickly becoming, what Dallas used to be. They're America's team. So everybody wants to see them. And it's almost like overload. After a while, it's like, all right, But for me, I just get a kick out of it because Andy Reid, I just remember who he was when he was the Eagles coach. I covered those teams. He was a gruff type of guy. He didn't answer people's questions. He was kind of a know-it-all. And now he's like everybody's grandpa, and he's got the number one quarterback, and they're rolling. They're actually Patrick Mahomes is 8-0 in wild card and divisional games. So every time he's been in the playoffs, he has played in the AFC Championship. Quickly, he's becoming a lot like Tom Brady. If you remember, Brady at a certain point, everybody's like, all right, I hope he loses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the level that we're seeing. And I look at it the other side. I'm like, wow, this is some greatness. It's incredible. Guy's 27 and just they find a way to get it done. Now, and we'll start talking about the other games. And we'll start with that one because that's one everybody was really watching that game. And as we move to the conference championship round, so it was the first time that Kansas City was on the road, and they were underdogs, which was surprising. So they go into Buffalo, they win 27-24. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about Tyler Bass and the missed 44-yarder. But in this game, I thought the Bills came out like a house on fire. They did real well in terms of they were physical, they were controlling the game, and then they kind of just got away from that, And there are a couple pivotal plays. They tried that fake punt which was like on their own 30-yard line.
Yeah.
And DeMar, Hamlin, who's everybody's glad he's back and everything, but he got stuffed on that play. And then luckily for them, McCole Hardman fumbled it right back out of the end zone to get the ball back. But I thought they got too pass happy, almost like what the Eagles continue to do. They forgot to try to run the football with some consistency, and their main guy running the ball was Josh Allen. He had 12 rushes for 72 yards and 2 TDs, but they kind of got away from that. And then the huge play nobody's talking about it is Diggs on that potential 65-yard bomb. He dropped the mess out of that ball, and that just deflated everything for that team. And the thing is, the Bills were very scrappy. They did a great job, I thought, in terms of just overcoming injuries. They had a lot of injuries in terms of their linebackers. They had A.J. Klein out there, a guy who was on his couch a couple weeks ago, the former Giants linebacker, and he was out there, and it was just a tough situation for them, but I just had that feeling. I was like, I really thought the Bills were going to find a way to get it done this time, and but Andy and Patrick Mahomes, they just have that magic in them. And Mahomes was 17-23, completed 74% of his passes.
Yep.
215, which is not a lot of yards, but he had just 2 TDs, no interceptions. And that was huge. And then a guy, Isaiah Pacheco, he just runs hard, man. You talk about it on NFL Network, they have angry runs. They probably should just show him every week the way he runs. He doesn't pitter patter. He hits the hole and he goes. He had 15 rushes, 97 yards, and a TD. And then Mr. Swift, Travis Kelce, decided to play. He was not dropping passes because the week before he was dropping passes and against the Steelers, and everybody said, what's wrong with him? He had 5 catches, 75 yards, and then 2 TDs as they became the best quarterback receiver combo in postseason history, passing Gronk and Tom Brady. Yeah. So, what do you think about in terms of this Chiefs team? Do they have enough to get it done? What are you thinking?
I think for how they played yesterday, it looked like, the Chiefs that we've seen before in the past. Do I believe they have enough to get into the Super Bowl? I don't. I think the Ravens really have their ticket in order to beat them. The only way the Ravens lose, and I know I use this throughout the year, but again, the Ravens beat the Ravens. Obviously, the Chiefs move on to the Super Bowl. I think Lamar Jackson continues to play on an MVP type, caliber. They played against the Texans. I'm pretty sure you'll get into that in a little bit, but looking at the way Kansas City played yesterday, overall, I'd probably give them, if there was a grade for their game yesterday, I'd give them a B+. They look more solidified than what we've had in the past couple of weeks. I don't like the antics at the very end. You're waving to this team that you already know is already heartbroken. You got snowballs thrown at you. By the way, it'd have been Philly. It would have been all over the place. But, of course, it's Buffalo. So we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
That was crazy. They were throwing it during plays in the game. They were throwing it on the field. And then after the game, they were pelting Mahomes. He took his wristband or something off and gave it to a kid in the stands. And you could just see them throwing him at it. He put his hand over his head, trying to just block some of this stuff. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, boy, I still remember. They were still talking about when the Eagles fans, Jimmy Johnson, back in the Buddy Ryan days. That's how long ago that was. And then the announcers, Romo and Nance, they didn't say anything about it. I'm like, come on, it was classless. It was absolutely classless. I know it's tough losing a game the way they did and everything, but they, throwing snowballs like that. Imagine if one of those balls just hit Mahomes in the eye.
Yep.
Next thing you got Roger Goodell, and it's a whole mess. So, I always loved when Sam White got on the mic. I don't know if Angel, you're probably younger than me, and he got on the mic and he said, "Knock it off. You're not from Cleveland. This is Cincinnati." I love that. I love that. I was waiting for somebody to say something like that yesterday. Like, knock it off. Stop throwing these snowballs, I've been at some Eagles games where I've seen guys get arrested, for throwing, or they at least got kicked out of the stadium for throwing snowballs. But yeah, I was surprised when no one said anything. It was crazy.
Yep. But again, it would have been
Yeah,
Philly. Would have been talking about it forever.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that Teddy Bear was talking about. Yeah, he said that he had no problem with Travis Kelce being supported by Jason Kelce supporting his brother the way he did, and yeah, I totally agree with him that it's all fun and everything, and he's an everyman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. By the way,
he's in all. They're on all the commercials, and they supersede football. And he's that blue collar type of guy, a guy you want to have a beer with, and he had a lot of beers yesterday. That's you can
sure
tell.
Did. By the way, this next comment's banned for like the next half hour. The wise
yeah, right. Yeah, he's still supporting his Chiefs, and we'll see if they're able to get it done. It's a tough proposition going to Baltimore. The weather is still a little cold out there, and as Angel said, this Ravens team, it's quietly going about their business. Everybody's talked about Lamar. Lamar, he was 1-3 in the playoffs, 0-2 at home before this season. But as you said, they had to buy. And I was talking to Q earlier on his show, and I was saying teams that come off a bye in the divisional round typically win 70% of the time. Obviously, we saw this again with Baltimore and the Niners taking care of business. Niners had some difficulty. We'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of Baltimore, they took a 10-10 game at the half, and then they just blew the doors off of the upstart Houston Texans. Yes, the young guys in Houston did a great job this season. Rookie head coach, rookie quarterback, and C.J. Stroud, who'll probably be rookie of the year. But I just think the Baltimore Ravens defense was just too much for them to handle in this one. They harassed C.J. Stroud, and then their linebackers made some big game-changing plays. Stroud was only 19 of 33, 175 yards, no TDs in this one. And he had passed for a lot of TDs in the regular season. And then, obviously, as we talked about, the star, probably the MVP this season is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
What a game. 16 of 22 for 73 yards, 73%. Only threw for 152 yards, but he had 2 TDs. And then, Angel, it was running the football. He didn't, for a lot of times, him and Jalen Hurts, sometimes they said, you know what, I'm going to show these guys, I'm going to beat them just from the pocket. I'm going to show them that I'm like, I'm a gunslinger like a Brett Favre, a Big Ben. Well, these guys, Lamar Jackson said, to hell with that. I'm trying to win this game. And he rushed the ball 11 times for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Big runs up the middle. I mean, they were trying to spy him, but he was just running away from the competition. And you can see that he finally wants to get into that championship conversation. So many times people are like, Lamar, glorified running back. He's a guy that he's not a quarterback to get it done well. He seems to be on a mission. And Baltimore is hosting the AFC Championship game for the first time since the old Baltimore Colts days, so that in 1971. So this will show you the last time that a championship game was in Baltimore. The Ravens, when they've won it in the past, they've had to go on the road. I remember they went up to New England and won. But this Ravens team is – a lot of people are believing in them, and they're a physical bunch. I mean, they ran the ball, I think, for over 200 yards in this game. Gus Edwards. They even got Dalvin Cook involved, and we talked about Lamar. So what are you thinking with this Ravens team?
I think right now, offensively, they have what it takes to get into the Super Bowl. They have also what it takes to beat the Chiefs, regardless of what the other comment had stated. But to me, Lamar Jackson right now is playing, I think, I would say at least about mid-season form. I know it's kind of goofy to say, even though it's postseason, but the way he scouted the field, the way he looked around, the offensive line, how much time to give him on the line for him to take a look and make something happen. He's been playing really well. The run game has picked up a lot for the Ravens. Jim Harbaugh, one thing he does is like John Harbaugh, for what he does to bring this team together, to be able to offensively, defensively, to get them to stay in this game, which they did. I mean, Houston, To me, it shouldn't have been a boat race by the Ravens, and it wasn't for the most part. Houston was hanging in there. But again, they made adjustments as needed after the half. You could see it, and the Ravens just end up prevailing. To me, with Kansas City looked okay come wild card weekend. They looked a little bit better on the divisional round, but to me personally, I don't believe they have enough what's going to take to beat Lamar Jackson. If they do, again, I'm just going to say the fix is in just because of the goofy Super Bowl logo color. Just throwing it out there. But to me, I think the Ravens beat the Chiefs. And I mean, I'm not going to say I want it to be a blowout. I think, if anything, it may be by 2, deciding the game. But I think it should be a good matchup unless the Ravens take that lead in the first half and they continue that way coming into the second half. But I think you look at the Ravens maybe even being up by 17, as Ryan likes to laugh about it. But I think if the Ravens, if they're up by 17 at the half, not saying it obviously because Patrick Mahomes, we've seen him come back before, but I think in the playoffs, it becomes a whole different story. So for me, I'm still going the Ravens.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, this team, the Chiefs, their guys are catching the football. MVS had 2 catches, one big contested catch yesterday, which was like, wow, okay, they're catching the football, and that's what they're going to need to do against the Ravens, because the Ravens are a physical team. They have Jadeveon Clowney and the rest of those guys that can get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. The Chiefs' bookend tackles have struggled a little bit this season with penalties and just overall protection. And I think the Ravens can get that pressure on Mahomes, that may turn this game. So, been back and forth on that one. We'll give our picks at the end of the show, but it's going to be an interesting proposition for the Chiefs. Can they find a way? The Spagnuolo in particularly, the Chiefs' defense has carried them actually this season. It hasn't really been Patrick Mahomes and his receivers. It's been Pacheco running the football a lot, and then you have Mahomes making passes here and there. But that defense has done a great job as well. So, the Chiefs' defense, they've only allowed 17 points per game, which is second in the league. Obviously, number one was the Ravens. They allowed only 16 and a half points per game. So we're talking about 2 stellar defenses here. The key metric, Angel, if the Chiefs are 9-0 when they score 21 points, actually you can make it now 10-0. Because if they get to that magic number, I think their defense is good enough to shut people down. But the thing is, the Ravens are really, their offense is rolling, man. They're scoring 28 points per game. That's their average.
Yeah.
So they've shook off that playoff bugaboo. You had Lamar. He said Lamar feeling good. He's not worrying about past performances in the playoffs, and he's now coming, to get to the Super Bowl. He wants to prove that he's in that upper echelon of quarterback. So that's going to be a fun game to talk about. We'll go over that in a minute. Let's look at what we got here. Yes, Debo injury is huge. When Debo Samuel went out with that shoulder injury, you could see that the Niners in their game plan overall changed. Let's talk about that game. The San Francisco 49ers, they come back and win this one. They were down. After the third, they're down. It was 21-14 going into the fourth quarter. And then they had 10 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to kind of seal this one out. Obviously, everybody's going to talk about Jordan Love, and he had 2 interceptions. One of them was off the hands of a receiver. Drake Greenlaw caught that one. And then at the end of the game, he had that Brett Favre type, no, don't throw it. He threw it across his body. The game ender to also Dre Greenlaw, and they sealed the thing. But I think the Niners breathed a sigh of relief in this one, because the Packers had that look and the way that game was trending. I'm like, man, are they like the '07 Giants here? Are they a team who just got hot at the right time? They were a middle of the road team, and they've been playing so well up to that point. But that was a huge win for the Niners. Sigh of relief for them and their fans. And Brock Purdy, though, has got to play better. He's got to play better going into next week. He was only 23 of 39, 59% completions. 252, 1 TD, and 0 interceptions. But there were several balls that the Packers dropped. There's like 2 or 3 potential interceptions that they were right in their hands and they dropped. So, Niners get the win. You got to tip your cap to Christian McCaffrey. What a great game. 17 rushes, 98 yards. He had that big 2 TDs. The one was on a long run that really broke this game open. And then he also had 7 catches for 30 yards. So, the Niners, good win, kind of sloppy. They took care of business. What did you think in terms of the Niners?
This one, it kind of drove me nuts a little bit. There is AJ in San Antonio says Jahmyr Gibbs is a stud. But
Yeah.
to me, I don't know what drove me more nuts. Either Green Bay making their own mistakes, Jordan Love obviously with the worst throw possible that he can make at the end of the game, or that no one tackles anymore and all they do is lead with their shoulders. All we're seeing is just bump off tackles. We're not seeing basically anyone tackle anymore because how many tackles were broken yesterday by both teams? But San Fran, you're absolutely right. They end up having a sigh of relief because San Fran did not play the way we've seen San Fran play the last 4 weeks. I don't know if that week off made him a little bit rusty. Brock Purdy, we did not see him playing as the elite Brock Purdy. Oh, and by the way, who also dropped before the game was that they wanted Tom Brady in 2023 before Brock Purdy to actually be the starting quarterback, which he dropped a little nugget. But San Fran, to me, did not play what we've seen, what we expected out of them. To see this team go into the Super Bowl, they would have to prove me wrong when it comes to Detroit. Detroit right now, I think, has the momentum at this point. Even going to San Fran this week out to Levi Stadium, they have, to me, what it takes to get to the Super Bowl. Unless Brock Purdy and crew, and if Deebo Samuel comes back, I haven't heard the injury report yet to see if he's going to be out or not, which I'm pretty sure he's going to come back. They'll ice him up, juice him up, whatever it is, that motion potion and put in the NFL, whatever it is to come back, because that elite trip is not guaranteed every single year. Last year, the Eagles took away that trip for him by taking away Brock Purdy. You take away Deebo Samuel for next week's game, it's going to be even harder for San Fran to win, as we saw when he left out of that game. So to me, this upcoming one with or at least this past game, because I know we're going to get into the other ones, but this one here, I wasn't solely convinced that San Fran should be in the Super Bowl. Now, again, we'll reset come Sunday. We'll see the first 30 minutes of football, and then we might go back and forth and talk about it in a text thread. But right now, to me, Detroit has the complete momentum to go and beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game.
They said Deborah. Deborah doesn't have a fractured shoulder, but status is on. I guess he doesn't like, or that's autocorrect. We'll see. But to finish up on this game, the kicking game came to rear its ugly head in this one too, because Carlson missed a huge kick for the Packers, another rookie kicker, and there's a 41-yarder that kind of turned that game. And then another thing about the Niners, in previewing any game there, Moody, their kicker, he's a rookie as well. He is shaky. He's another shaky guy, and he's no Justin Tucker. You have Tucker on the other side for the Ravens, and then Butker for the Chiefs. They're two solid veteran kickers. And then you have the Money Badger for the Lions. We'll see about him. But Moody is scary. A lot like Bass, a lot of foreshadowing. You're like, oh, man, is he going to miss a big kick in a big situation for them? So, as I said, the Niners survived. They're happy to be moving on. They had a sigh of relief there. The Packers kind of got away from their game plan. They were physical early on this game. If they had just stuck with Aaron Jones, who had 18 rushes for 108, I think they could have won that game, just ran it down their throat, but they got away from it, and they got pass happy, and then the Niners took advantage of it. So Niners move on. But as a lot of people were saying, I see in the comments, everybody's talking about the Lions. The Lions are becoming a lot like the Eagles in 2017. They they might have some underdog mass somewhere. Angel, everybody is jumping on them in terms of, the little engine that could. And it's a great story because They have not been in an championship NFC championship game since 1991. I remember them watching that game. It was the Lions versus the Redskins, and unfortunately it came up short there. Obviously, the Lions have never been to the Super Bowl, but this group, they don't care. You know what I mean? They have their head coach Dan Campbell, who's done a great job in terms of just these young guys are playing even keel for him. He's gotten his quarterback, Jared Goff, a guy who we've all questioned over years. He's got him protecting the football. He's got him believing. And this Lions team is becoming America's sweetheart. So, Gibbs, incredible. He only had 9 rushes for 74 yards. I mean, that just showed you the explosiveness of this young man. He had 9 rushes, 74 yards, 1 TD. Laporta had 9 catches, 65 yards in terms of, he gutted it out in terms of he's had that knee injury. An interesting thing is, Angel, talking about the Eagles, the Lions today signed Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if he's able to get moved up from the practice squad, but I think he may get out there on Sunday for them. So, Lions did a good job. Yeah, they did a good job in terms of making Baker make mistakes. I know you're down there in Tampa area, and some of the Tampa guys who we previewed the game with the Eagles for, they told me Baker's a new guy. Baker's, he's not making the mistakes he did before. Well, he had those 2 killer interceptions, particularly the one at the end of the game. It kind of was a game closer. But great season for him. Mike Evans had a great bounce back. He had 8 catches, 147 and a TD. And the Bucs, they kept their season alive one more week, but this Lions team, you just saw just the dominance of them at certain points in this game. And it was good to see their defense finally step up, because their defense has been their Achilles heel all year. The Lions defense they average 27 points a game on offense, but their defense is allowing 23 points per game. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to make sure they slow down the Niners machine. And in this one, they were able to kind of reel in the Bucs in the second half, because it was 10-10 after the half, and then the fourth quarter is where they really made the move. They outscored the Bucs 14-6 in the fourth quarter to kind of close this game out. So, what did you see with this Lions team, and do you think they have a shot?
I want to bring something up here that Ryan shared with me, which this is also kind of ridiculous too. But so Tyler Bass has deactivated all of his social media accounts after receiving harassment and death threats over the missed kick last night. I mean, the Bills fans want him out of Buffalo. First of all, it's just, come on, man. It's utterly ridiculous. Honest to God. You just brought it up, Green Bay. Their kicker, right? Guaranteed kicks. He missed it last night. Things happen during the games. That's why it's a 60-minute game. You have plenty of times to run the ball in, pass the ball in, trick plays. You got it all. It's just, it was a momentum killer. When it comes to Detroit and Tampa Bay last week, and granted, I didn't feel confident, obviously, and I was right when it came to the Eagles and Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, though, as we spoke about in Martinez coming as well, too many people were putting them up on such a big pedestal that they were looking already ahead to the NFC Championship game without forgetting about the divisional game. Now, Detroit knew that 1991 is a magical year. They also are riding I'm surprised that people have not come out with 1991 T-shirts, honestly, to sell, as far as the game itself. But Tampa Bay made their mistakes. Again, Baker Mayfield looked more poised than he had. Even the first playoff game he was with Cleveland, he looked a lot better. But Mike Evans, let's not forget either, had a perfect pass right in the breadbasket and let it go right through his hands. So even though Mike Evans played well, there was also mistakes as well. Defensively, when we had A.J. Turner above him from the aftermath, he talked about that cushion coverage. You saw that a lot yesterday with Tampa Bay in the second half. Detroit just played a well-balanced game yesterday, all the way around. They just looked so much more better than obviously what Tampa did. To me, Detroit going forward, again, I know they have to travel to San Fran. They're going to Levi Stadium. I think Detroit has what it takes to make it to the Super Bowl, and beating San Fran. San Fran, I believe you get them down even by 18 at the half, they're not coming back out on the second half to do much. You put the pressure on with Brock Purdy, which we even saw yesterday at times with why am I drawing a blank here? Brock Purdy and Green Bay. When Green Bay was putting the pressure on them, you can see at times where it was getting to them. Detroit's defense, much better than Green Bay. Not taking anything away from Green Bay, much better. Secondary's a lot better. You start getting those corners to come in, and you don't have to blitz all the time. Put the pressure on Brock Purdy. It's going to make him feel uncomfortable, and you see that from time to time throughout the season, throughout the regular season. So Detroit, to me, has all the keys, literally, to beat San Fran next week and make their way into February for that first elusive, at least, trip to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And you're listening to Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, the Broad Street South Network. I'm being joined by Angel Martinez is pinch hitting for Kevin Midgette, who unfortunately had some technical issues. Yeah, and this is a fun time around the National Football League because all the pretenders are gone. You know what I mean? And we're left with the Final Four. And the season, it goes too fast, but next thing you know, we're going to be talking about Vegas and the Super Bowl and who should be there. But everybody knows as we wrap the last 15 minutes of the show, we always talk about the upcoming games in the week ahead. So the first game this Sunday it's going to be at 3. I don't know why it starts at 3 o'clock now. It used to always start at 1 o'clock. It used to be a 1 and a 4. So now it's 3 o'clock.
Because they're West Coast.
And and thank goodness, Angel, it's just straight AFC is CBS, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And the NFC's on Fox. We don't have to worry about Peacock. You know, now I'm stuck with Peacock. I started watching some of their other programming because I said, well, I got it for the game. You know, I might as well watch some of this stuff because I'm stuck with it. But it's CBS, it's Fox. So on the AFC side, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, who are now 13-6, and they're going to play the Baltimore Ravens, who are 14-4. And when I look at this game, I haven't looked at the lines yet. I'll look at them when you're talking, but I think Baltimore is going to be a favorite. And as usual, Patrick Mahomes, he people are shocked that he's an underdog in this situation. But you know, I've been back and forth on this one, and in terms of Lamar Jackson, I think maybe he's finally over the hump. So as long as they can stop Patrick Mahomes and keep a check on the line, I think this Ravens team can win this one. I think the Ravens win in a very close battle. What are you thinking?
I think so as well. The big thing was, I think what a lot of people took for granted, you know, I kept hearing all week long, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to do it on the road. He's going to have to win, you know, his first divisional game on the road, blah, blah. Well, he's won Super Bowls on the road. So to me, it made a big deal about it, about nothing. So I know there was a lot of talk about it. Obviously, it came out on top. But again, at times, we saw when the pressure came the same way to Mahomes, not performing as well. Now, I think there's also a little bit of cockiness that's coming in with the Chiefs, and we started seeing it towards the end part of the game here come yesterday. You cannot bring that same kind of attitude to Baltimore. Ravens know it's win or go home. It's that simple. They also know they have the opportunity of not only going to the Super Bowl, but knock out the defending Super Bowl champions. Lamar Jackson, as long as he stays healthy, as long as he can see the field well, as long as that O-line is protecting them, there's no real reason why that run balance offense that we see from Harbaugh week in and week out can happen. To me, if you're going to do it against Kansas City, run that ball through that line, because we saw weak spots yesterday in the Kansas City's defense. Run that ball, worst case scenario, then you start throwing it. But I think you run the ball more against Kansas City, and I think you have a better success. I'm still going with the Ravens over Kansas City for the AFC Championship game.
All right. And Angel, the Ravens are a 3.5 point favorite. The over under is 44.5. So they expect some scoring in this one, but the Chiefs are a surprising underdog. I know it's crazy as that sounds. You know, Andy Reid, who's one of the all-time winningest coaches in the playoffs, and Patrick Mahomes, they're being an underdog. But this Ravens team has proven this season that they are a dominant bunch, and they've beaten all the top teams. Don't forget they thrashed the Niners. They beat the Dolphins pretty bad. I could go on and on. So this Ravens team is coming along pretty well. Their receivers have always been kind of a question mark. The Zay Flowers, the rookie they brought in there from Boston College, has made a lot of nice plays for them. I think they may be getting Mark Andrews back. He's been practicing. They're tight end, so they're excited to get him back. But they're running the football with some serious dominance. So I expect this game to be a tough physical battle. And then you got Justin Tucker, who's one of the best kickers in the game. So the funny thing is, Angel, at the beginning of the year, Rich and I did our preseason picks, and I said the Niners versus KC in the Super Bowl. I probably should stay with my pick from earlier, but I just have a feeling that this Ravens team, we always talk about destiny this time of the year, and I just think this team has finally got all the pieces together, and you're going to see Lamar Jackson have another great performance. And that Kansas City defense has played very well, and my son made a point to me, and I looked it up. Kansas City really did not play a tough opposition, in terms of teams with winning records. So their defensive numbers are kind of inflated at this point. And yes, they have Chris Jones, and McGuffey's a pretty good corner, but there are areas where you can attack them. And you saw the Buffalo Bills do that. So, they had trouble containing Josh Allen running the football. And we know who the best rushing quarterback in the league is. That's Lamar Jackson. So as long as the Ravens don't get stubborn and try to throw passes all over the place, they need to lean on what they do best. They need to run the football, play quality defense. And then Mahomes has made a lot of mistakes this year in terms of interceptions. I think he had about 14 interceptions this year, and the receivers dropping the football. So I expect that this would be a good, tough physical game, but the Ravens come out on top. The evening game, so the NFC Championship game is 6:30. It's going to be on Fox. Obviously, you'll have the number one announcing team there, and you have the Detroit Lions, who are now they're 14-5. They've won 14 games this season, and they're playing the Niners, who won 13. They're 13-5. So, this is a tested Lions team. As we said, they're upstarts. And they're a fun story. I actually, one of the players, Craig Reynolds, I've known his father since I was a kid, and his father has been posting all the videos from the locker room and pictures from the stands. So I've just been kind of following along the excitement of the Lions and how well they've been playing. And it's great to see Craig out there, a kid who I knew him when he was real young man. He's out there, and he scored a touchdown, so that was pretty exciting. And this Lions team, as I said, they have no fear. They really don't care at this point. They don't care who they're playing. They were happy to have another home game. But I as you said, Angel, I don't think they don't have any fear of this Niners team at this point, because the Niners, they can be had. Yes, they have a lot of big names. They got players that are paid very high at every position all over the field, their offensive line, their running back, their receivers. But not having Debo probably with that shoulder injury. Mm-hmm. And then you talk about Brock Purdy. The weather, everybody says, the weather was bad. It was raining, this and that. They have a lot of excuses, but Purdy did not play that well. And you always wonder, you're like, okay, is he really Mr. Irrelevant? Because, yes, he's a guy in the car, but you want your quarterback driving the car. And, right. And you're like, is he the guy to get it done? So what are you thinking when you talk about this matchup with the Detroit Lions going to the Niners?
You bring up a great point, because if Brock Purdy, once again, if you see him scattering all over the field, if he looks like what's the Waffle House, scattered, smothered, covered, as long as you see that all over the field, that's the way Brock Purdy, you bring that pressure. I think we're talking about tale of two tapes. If this Sunday proves coming up at 6:30 that the Lions end up going to San Fran and basically knocking Brock Purdy on his behind the whole entire time, put on that pressure, then you can bring up a good case saying that he's not Mr. Irrelevant, because at that point he's not relevant. If that being the case, I think he had a tough time this week. Kyle Shanahan, one thing that I've watched with him is that when the pressure is on, he tries to almost make a play. When you'll see him look at his card, which one can I, how many times can I flip it around? Because that defense start putting on that kind of pressure, he doesn't know what to do. It's like you back him up in a corner. I think if the Lions can bring that pressure on the first 15 to 18 minutes of this game, we're talking about two different teams. And to me, I still think the Lions defense can more than uphold San Fran's defense. And to me, Jared Goff needs to get to the Super Bowl just to prove to everyone in LA, by the way, you guys made a mistake.
Yeah, and Shanahan has a great point about him because he gets tight in big situations. Let's not forget he was the coordinator of that Falcons team that was up 28-3 against the Patriots.
Correct.
And they couldn't bring it home. Everybody talks about Matt Ryan and this and that, but he was the guy calling the plays. So, and they're a huge favorite, Angel. I'm just looking at the lines here. The Niners are 7-point favorite in
They're
this
giving
game.
them too much. They're giving them way too much.
And the over-under is 51 points. So they're expecting a high-scoring game to come out of this one. I know Aaron Glenn's defense for the Detroit Lions has had their struggle this season, but you saw with Hutchinson and those guys, they were able to get that pressure, and then they started getting some interceptions in this game. So they can do that. And I know typically you don't talk about lines, and I save it for Richard's show, but 7 points. If you're a Lions fan, grab that 7 points. Take that 7 points because, as we said, they could win this thing outright because the Niners, as good as their record is, and how dominant they looked against the Eagles and the Cowboys, they're kind of they have a glide about themselves. Maybe it's the rust that we talked about earlier. They had the week off and everything, but they did not look like that dominant team. And you have a Lions team that's coming in there with no fear. And this may be a team of destiny, almost like that 2017 Eagles team or the 2011 Giants, who a lot of people didn't give a chance to against the New England Patriots. So they're going in there. They're young. They're scrappy. And, Brad Holmes did a great job in terms of this roster. I do want to see AJ talked about earlier, Jahmyr Gibbs. If they can get Jahmyr Gibbs going and Montgomery, their running backs, against the Niners defense, that around the edges you can make some plays against them. You saw that Aaron Jones was able to run the football effectively against them, and you have two good running backs here in Montgomery, and then they have Penei Sewell, who's one of the most dominant road grading tackles out there. So they're probably going to run to his side behind him. Now the key injury as well is Ragnow, their center, has a knee injury. They're not sure if he's going to be able to play for the Lions. That could be a potential big loss, but I'm very interested to see in this one. Now, last week, home teams were 4-1. Actually, in the wild card round, they were 5-1.
Right.
Home teams were 5-1, and then this week they were 3-1. So the home teams have had a lot of advantage in this postseason. It's going to be interesting to see if the Ravens and the Niners can defend home ground. Early on, like I said, I had my pick earlier in the season, but when I look at this one, I think Detroit's going to pull a surprise. So I'll go Ravens and the Lions. It's going to be interesting to see if my picks come to fruition, but I think this Lions team, it's just a team of destiny. And as long as Jared Goff, a guy who we talked about, he's defended the football very well, been very efficient. He's not turning the football over, which is always his Achilles heel. He had no turnovers this week. He threw for 287 yards, two TDs, no interceptions. And he seems really locked in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's one of the best young receivers out there. No one's talking about him. And then they also have Jamison Williams, a receiver from Alabama, who's really come along. So, this Lions team, I think they can get it done. It may be a close game. And then, like I was saying, watch out for the kicker for the Niners. I think he's going to miss a big kick, and that's going to be one of the stories in this game. So, going to be a lot of fun to watch. And it's also going to be fun to watch Wednesday to see if what excuses the Eagles come up with, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni. They're going to be on the clock. We're going to see their plan for the future for this Eagles team. Maybe they'll have their defensive coordinator to have to announce, but A lot to look forward to this week in football, and I'm just glad that everybody was able to join us here on 1029 The Game in the Broad Street South Network for Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Angel, anything else to add before we close?
No, other than I'm dying to see, and man, I really hope the Lions bring the pressure. I hope they really manhandle San Fran for the most part, because I know right now they're confident. I'm not gonna say they're cocky. They are confident, but I think for the Lions are destined. And the only thing that would be controversial would be, which we'll have to watch, who's the officiating crew for both. Because let's not forget, there's 3 officials that are out there that have been fixing games this year. The NFL doesn't want to admit it, but go back to a lot of tape. It's kind of coincidental. So we'll see who the officiating crew is going to be this week.
Yeah, especially when the Kansas, I know Ryan and his Kansas City Chiefs, they always seem to get the good home cooking. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There were a couple of calls in that game. Like I remember Josh Allen, he slid. Somebody came right over and hit him while he was down on a slide. And my son said immediately, if that was Mahomes, he would have got the call. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, they love Mahomes and the favorites around the NFL. They would love to have the Chiefs in the Super Bowl versus the Niners. We'll see how it all shakes out, but hopefully the officials keep their flags in their pocket, let the guys play, and we'll have hopefully some good weather out there. But looking forward to some good games this week, and then we'll start talking about the Super Bowl. So thanks for joining us for another week on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game and a Broad Street South Network. Make sure to check out everybody else on the Tony Bruno Network, particularly Angel Martinez and company.